let's think about what it actually means to have lead in your drinking water. First of all, how much lead is safe to drink? The EPA says that there's no amount of lead that is safe to drink, and actually, young children cannot be exposed to any lead. It's very dangerous for them. Of course, when it comes to the amount of risk, it always depends on the actual person as well as everything else that's in the water. Because water that comes out of your tap is not just H2O. There's minerals and additives. You might have heard of fluoride. So you have to think about all the chemical conditions of the water as well as how much of it is actually being consumed. So how does lead even get into the drinking water? So really, in the case of Flint, it was because of the pipes that brought the water from the Flint River to the residential taps. With old plumbing, pipes can contain lead and they wear down over time. And really, the most common source of lead contamination in water has been pipes, faucets, and fixtures, which were made with lead before the 80s. So in older cities and in homes that were built before the 80s, you're more likely to find lead pipes. Let's talk about the effects of lead exposure and how they vary by age and condition. So, in children specifically, even at a really small amount of exposure to lead, being exposed to lead can cause severe problems in children, including behavioral problems and learning problems. They might have lower IQ or be hyperactive or have a stunted growth or even hearing problems or anemia. Now, in pregnant women, when they're exposed to lead, they might have a smaller baby or a premature birth because lead can actually cross through the placenta. And adults can also suffer a lot of negative impacts from being exposed to lead. Specifically, they might have issues with their heart, they might have an increased blood pressure, or they might have hypertension. It can also impact the kidneys, and it can cause problems in reproduction, both in men and women. When you have really high exposure to lead, which is very rare, but when you have it, it can even cause both children and adults to die. When thinking about lead exposure, the most important thing has always been the risks to children and infants and fetuses because these are the most vulnerable populations when we're thinking about lead exposure. Lower doses of lead, even small exposures, can cause much more severe behavioral or physical impacts in children when we're comparing them to adults. The CDC tells us that intervention should happen if the amount of lead in the blood is at or above 5 micrograms per deciliter. But remember, there is no safe amount of lead that you can be exposed to. It's very dangerous. So let's think about the things you can do to make sure you have safe drinking water. Firstly, you have to learn more about your household water. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, requires all community water systems to prepare and deliver an annual water quality report, which is a consumer confidence report. So, as a customer, you're allowed to request one of these. You can also contact your water utility to get the latest report. And if your water comes from a well or some private water supply, you can check with your health department or with nearby utilities that use groundwater to get information on the contaminants that might be present in your area. Now, the difference is that community water systems supply water to the same population year round and usually serve at least 25 people or 15 residences, but someone on a private water supply won't have their water captured in the annual water quality report, so they might have to do additional research or testing on their own. You can also have your water tested for lead and other contaminants. Especially when your home has internal plumbing materials that might have lead, the EPA definitely recommends that you have it tested. Now, you can't taste or smell or see lead in water in any way, so the only way to tell it's there is if you get it tested. And there should be a list of certified labs in your state that can actually run those tests. And it does cost money, but it shouldn't cost you more than $100. So make sure to contact your water supplier because they might have useful information that you can find out whether or not there was lead fixtures in your water system. Also, you should definitely clean your faucets and water sources regularly. You can change the screen, that's the little bit that the water goes through before it comes into your glass. And you can also make sure that all the sediments and debris that are in that screen, that's an aerator, you can clean those out. If there's lead in the aerator, it'll still get into your water, which is why you have to clean that screen. It's taking stuff out of the water that's going into your glass, but if there's a lot of it built up, it'll still come through. Lastly, to protect yourself from lead in your drinking water, you can use a filter. There are filters which are certified to remove lead, and all you have to do to protect yourself using one of these is install it properly and make sure to replace it regularly. It's helpful to get a filter that changes color or has some kind of indicator to tell you when it's time to replace it.